CTO at One Laptop per Child, and we make these cute little green laptops, and we do a lot of things with them. We have about, I haven't looked recently, about 2.5 million of these have been shipped worldwide so far. The folks in Uruguay, who have about 400,000 children between the ages of 6 and 12. Uruguay became the first country in the world to have one laptop per child. Every school child in Uruguay has one of these laptops. They take them off to school. It's very cool if you're like sitting, you know, at a bus stop in Montevideo and the kids are all going to school. They all wear uniforms. They all have these white shirts with blue like bow ties. And they're all in heaven, they all have their little green and white laptops with them. We really designed these. We started shipping them in late 2007. And we designed these for places that other laptops can't go. And in thinking about it, I was talking to CTO about this class, and thinking about mobile technology and being mobile, I really kind of thought about some of the things that we do that mean mobile to us, that maybe are a little different than some of the things that mobile means in the rest of the world. And I think one of our biggest challenges from a technology perspective is getting people in the US, people in the first world, to understand why it's appropriate to, or why you need a device like this instead of, instead of a MacBook. I mean, I use a MacBook Air. That's my primary computer. Okay. Well, I say, well, you know, there's a lot of those out there. There's a lot of netbooks out there. You know, why do you do those? And, you know, why don't we do those instead of doing something like this? Okay. The first thing that I would tell them is that I do this. Oh! No. You know, and then I sort of jump on it a little bit. And you know, we do these OLPC parlor tricks here. So, and then I open it up and I push a little power button. Oh, and it won't. Whoops! It will wake up. Sometimes I knock the battery loose, but it boots up just fine, and actually has no problem. And that's the first thing that we mean when we mean mobile is, you know, you've got to be able to do stuff like that. You've got to be able to kick it around with one prop. Yeah, go ahead. One prop that I forgot. So now I have to do the same thing with my MacBook Air. I'll be shopping at the Apple store on the way to the office. I want to whip out my screwdriver. Because I also want you, we had a good chat at lunch, but please, you know, like jump up and make noise and ask questions and yell whatever you want.
Is it a screwdriver?
This is how you know that you're a CTO. So you walk around with, you know, like this set of, you know, you got one screwdriver that's the standard and Phillips bits and another one that's all the Torx bits. I do not have the MacBook Air pentalobe security screws. I don't do that kind of stuff. But the first thing that we mean when we talk about mobile is ruggedness. This is the most important thing that we do with these laptops. These laptops are, oh wait, I actually did knock a little rubber bumper here. Came a little loose, so I tuck that back in. These laptops are tested, drop tested in manufacturing. It's a part of the design work. They're drop tested to land on a, this is probably concrete with a carpet on top, so it's probably very much this surface to withstand a drop of 1.5 meters onto sort of a random free fall drop onto that surface, or a 1 meter drop onto bare concrete. Okay. They still do break, but they're pretty tough. And you can do things that you can't do otherwise with them. And that's really sort of, we look at what do we do that's different with our laptops. That's number one. They're rough and rugged. They're designed for 6 to 12-year-old kids, you know, and they're a little bit messy. You know, the keyboard is a silicone membrane keyboard. It's not really watertight, but it's reasonably water resistant. The other thing that we do with respect to that level of ruggedness is that the motherboard is up here. So that's unusual, and there are a couple of reasons for doing that. But if you spill something, there's literally nothing down here but the keyboard and the touchpad. So if you spill something down here, you're not going to fry the motherboard, you're not going to trash the display, and it's relatively inexpensive and relatively easy to replace. When you're traveling around, again, think about mobile stuff. When you're traveling around with a laptop, you've got a screen that can get scratched. You've got headphone, microphone, USB ports that crap can get into. Okay? So when you close the laptop, those all get closed up. Okay? So if you're carrying a laptop to school, the only port that's exposed is the power connector, which is actually pretty safe. You know, you put junk in there and you just kind of smash it, knock something out, and it'll work okay. The laptops also all have these EXO logos on them. Each of these comes in 20 different colors. So there are 400 different combinations, so that if you're in class, you know which machine is yours. Okay, so you can recognize, you know, since I get to cherry pick them, so I pick a different set of colors. Some of the colors are not so hot.
Is the green standard, or does it have
this green?
Yeah.
Yes. They are all green and white. The only thing that differs are these two. But these machines, this is actually our second generation machine. The first generation machine was built on an AMD Geo processor. It was too slow. It was 433 megahertz, you know? Boy, back in the good old days. You know? Yeah, it was a 433 megahertz processor. It had 1 gigabyte of solid state storage on the motherboard. And it was pretty slow. It was pretty cool. And one of the things we were just talking about as we walked over here, marker. Oh, okay. One of the things we were talking about on the way over here, part of the problem with that slowness is that if you look at any technology and you look at time and you look at cost, okay, it kind of tends to follow a curve that looks like this, okay? That the cost will drop fairly quickly after the technology has been introduced. Tends to level out for a little bit. I probably exaggerated a little. There's more of a flat spot in there. But it then starts to creep up again because the volumes aren't there. People aren't buying them. Our first laptop had a 433 megahertz processor and also had it had 256 megabytes of DDR1 RAM. Well, nobody's buying DDR1 memory anymore, and it's getting expensive. And it's actually costs more than the lower power, faster DDR2 memory. So what OLPC learned early on was we can't just design the hardware, ship it, and forget. That in order to keep our costs down, remember this is supposed to be a $100 laptop. It doesn't cost $100 yet. In order to keep those costs low, we need to constantly, we need to update the hardware, we need to refresh the hardware to keep in touch with the technology trends that we're trying to follow. And so the second version of the laptop, that's what this is, has a 1 gigahertz processor. It's got a gigabyte of DDR2 memory, and it's got 4 gigabytes of internal NAND storage on a micro SD card, and all of that is cheaper than the first one was.
That's useful.
They all run Fedora Linux of one flavor or another. The first 2 versions also, Microsoft did a version of Windows XP for them. That they did about 7,000 or 8,000 pilot machines, and that's done. So they all run Linux. They all run Fedora. Somebody else had a question? Yeah.
How much do they cost now if you want to get one?
If you want to buy one,
Sure.
you can.
Can I buy one and they give one to somebody overseas?
No.
No.
We did that twice.
Yep.
The first time we were stupid. The second time we were really stupid. And if we did it the third time, we really, really, really ought to get shot. When the machines first came on board, we first introduced them in 2007, one of the things we needed was volume. We wanted production volume. We needed to be able to get the factory running. One production line produces 55,000 of these machines in a month. They're produced by Quanta Computer at their factory in Songjiang, which is just outside of Shanghai. The design teams are in Taipei, but production is in China. And to get one line running, it's 55,000 a month. And you can't, again, to keep costs low, you can't like run the line for 3 days and then shut it down and have to go build something else and come back for 3 days. So you want some volume. So in 2007, the organization introduced this Give One, Get One program, where you give us, the machines at the time cost about $200 to make. It was $188 plus shipping and and stuff, so call it $200. And you would basically pay $400 and you get one, and you would fund giving one to some child somewhere in the world, someplace out there. And we sold, around Christmas time, 2007, we sold about 87,000 pairs of machines. So people bought 87,000 machines, and we funded 87,000 machines around the world. It took us most of a year to get those 87,000 machines shipped, and I doubt they all actually got shipped. And this is a group that mainly grew out of researchers at the Media Lab at MIT. Okay? Retail was not their department. Okay? They were not good at that. And it was just a disaster. Didn't know how to do the logistics, we just screwed it up royally. It was a mess. 2008, we said, okay, we'll do it again, but we're gonna do it right this time. And so we got PayPal on board to give us, they all donated their services, but PayPal came on board to deal with the payment processing, and Amazon would do all of our fulfillment, and we were all in great shape. And Amazon, though, because they know what the hell they're doing, said, before you start taking orders, we want those machines in our warehouse. Okay? We're not gonna get bitten by that. So we had to guess, well, how many would we sell? We sold 87,000 the first year. Done this again, we had our act together this time, we were much better off. We built 125,000 machines. And they were all in Amazon's warehouses, ready to go. They went on sale, people started buying them, they started getting shipped. We sold 12,000 machines. And we had 112,000 machines sitting in Amazon's warehouses. And at $200 a pop, 112,000 machines is about $24 million worth of laptops. So we found ourselves with lots and lots of laptops and no money. And this was a very stressful period for the organization. And we managed eventually to sell the laptops to other countries that were buying the laptops. We managed to recover from the process, but we are strongly disinclined to ever do that again.
Yeah. So the idea was you could buy one for yourself, and that you would fund another one.
Exactly.
So you ordered 87,000, you would have to make 160,000.
Well, the first time we made 87,000 the first time, and then we took the money for the other 87,000 and put it in the bank, and waited until we actually had an opportunity to be able to donate laptops to some country or some group of children.
So your deal was like buy one, get one free for someone who needs it or something.
Exactly.
Could you donate the one? Could you donate both of them? Like
being in the laptop business, we have two fundamental problems with that business model. We develop laptops for people who have no electricity and no money. Okay, and this is not really can be a little tricky at times. And the no electricity we work pretty well on, and I'll talk about that in a minute. The no money is kind of hard. So our audience is really the 50 least developed countries in the world. That's where we're trying to get these laptops to for education for children. The problem is that they really have no money. And where the laptops have gone have typically been, if you sort of divided the world socioeconomically into thirds, so the top third, middle third, bottom third. We want to go to the bottom third. But where we've been successful is the middle third, because they're the ones who want to invest in their children, who want to invest in education, and they've got some money, like Uruguay. Uruguay is not the poorest country in the world by any means. Okay? Neither is Peru, although there are some very poor areas of Peru. Uruguay and Peru have more of our laptops than anybody else. Rwanda is third, and Rwanda really is relatively poor. And they've really made that kind of investment. So the funding mechanism has been this give one, get one approach, was in part to get the production lines rolling, but also to allow us to deliver laptops to the UN refugee schools for Palestinian children in the West Bank and Gaza, where they have them. To Nepal, Papua New Guinea, Ghana, a number of other places. Yeah.
Would you ever consider running Android on your machine?
No. I shouldn't, actually, I shouldn't say that. Yes, we have, and we said no. It's a laptop. Nobody runs Android on a laptop. Okay. And we can really give people, a Fedora experience. There's no touch screen.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Going back to that Fedora, why did you choose that Linux distro over all Linux distros?
There was actually one key decision point in that process, which was that Red Hat gave us a whole shitload of money. And that sort of influenced our thinking at the time. They actually gave us a lot of engineers. This was before I joined the organization. They were very interested in a Linux distribution. One of the things that we really focus on is the fact that all of our software that we ship on the laptop is open source software. There's no license encumbrances. Even the firmware, we were talking about this briefly at lunch, our BIOS firmware that the machine boots from is called open firmware. It's written in Forth. It is open source software. You can even, because it's Forth, it's an interpreted language. You can, as the machine powers up, press the escape key, and you can get into the interactive Forth interpreter, and you can fiddle around and do whatever you want with it. So the open source approach was very important. The fact that it ended up being Fedora was really a historical artifact. The fact that Red Hat, initially when the organization got started, there were a number of corporate partners, corporate funders that got us going, and Red Hat contributed money, but also contributed a lot of engineers to work on the software. Yeah.
While open source, I can understand from a developer's perspective as being good. Since the laptop for children, would that be difficult for kids to navigate a Linux computer?
It would be. So giving somebody, giving a 6-year-old child something that looks like a GNOME desktop on top of Fedora might be a little bit confusing. One of the things that the organization did was to make a considerable investment in building a Linux desktop environment called Sugar. It was designed for young children, pre-literate children, 6 to 12-year-old children, and it was designed to make it easy for them to work with their machine, work on various applications, explore various applications. There's a whole collection of applications that are built into the machine, so they can do something as simple as.
We have a projector for the screen if you want it. No? Yeah. A physical projector.
Not a VGA doodad?
No. Actually,
okay.
The real one. Somebody was talking there.
Well, he was. It was this guy. Yeah.
This is so cool. My cousin.
Let's see if we can make this work.
Let's see. Here we go. Oh, it's on here. This one's warming up, and it'll be there in just 20 seconds.
Okay, it's color adjusted. How about that? So, can I make this a little further away?
Yeah, you can zoom in and out of here. Oops. Let's see. Zoom again.
Oh, that's great.
There you go.
That's great.
Yeah,
Perfect.
there you go.
Okay.
It's a little bit bugged out.
Yeah. So it's something as simple as.
Oh my god.
He will.
Speak Spanish.
Say something there. You can stop what you're doing. This is these activities are sort of a portfolio-based approach. So the child can keep track of. It's a little bit hard to see, but this is green. it's colored, the speak activity, and it gives them an indication of which ones they've been using recently, so they know which ones they've explored a little bit. There are things, simple maze games, things to play with. There are also, we have,
We made a maze game.
good, good. Here's another game for you guys. Here's Implode. Oh, I'm sorry, this is the memorize activity. So it's like a memory game where you can go back and play with turtle art. Turtle art is very popular. Turtle art is a programming language like a Logo or Scratch. So it's designed for kids to be able to do things with their turtles and make them go around.
Is this like what Micro Worlds was?
Yeah, it's sort of similar categories of things. One of the things that
Very similar to Scratch.
that the group worked very closely early on with Seymour Papert at MIT, and a number of people who've worked with a group at the Media Lab called the Lifelong Kindergarten Group, and these groups have really done a lot of research into the fact that writing software, even if it's this kind of graphical programming language stuff, but writing software and debugging software is as close as a child can get to learning about learning, and learning about how to learn, and learning about how to think about things. So we're not trying to create a world full of programmers, but we're trying to take advantage of the educational opportunities in creating, being able to build something, try it out, modify it, see what breaks, see what it does, and do that sort of thing. Yeah.
So how is like the constructivist approach to education worked out in the real world? Because I heard that a lot of criticism of the project was that teachers didn't get it, and students were mostly going on didn't use the tools that were given to them to explore that method learning.
There's been a lot of criticism of the approach. There's been some really good research on the approach. The fact that teachers don't get it is definitely true. We don't really care.
Okay.
It's not about the teachers, it's about the kids. But that is a stressful process. The teachers will get upset, teachers don't get training, teachers aren't getting paid extra for teaching this new technology or whatever. But the educational outcomes have been best measured in Uruguay. Uruguay not only was the first country to do one laptop per child, but they are a bunch of data weeds. I mean, they just love data. So they analyze everything, they track everything. They do, one of the things they did in Uruguay, here, I'm gonna kill this machine for a minute, get back to talk about technology. When you take out the battery, there's a serial number with a barcode. A serial number with a barcode right here in the battery compartment. Okay? If you live in Uruguay and your laptop breaks, you take it and you drop it in the mailbox. And the first thing is, it will survive the drop into the mailbox. But the post office will pick it up. They will look at your barcode. They will take it in, repair it. They know whose machine it was because they know the serial number, and they will just ship it back to you and deliver a repaired laptop. Uruguay also provides free Wi-Fi access to every one of these laptops throughout the country.
Wow.
So we do that as well. So the analytical data is early, but it's actually showing that there really are positive outcomes. But again, if we keep pushing to where we ought to go, a lot of the kids in the 50 poorest countries in the world don't have teachers or don't have effective teachers. So it's not really about the teachers, it's what the kids are doing. Yeah.
So you just mentioned Uruguay has a very good Wi-Fi network for these people. In countries where they don't have such a network, I read something about a relay technology where one laptop signals to another and you can build a network off of them?
That's right, and that's actually something I wanted to talk about, so thank you. Good segue. And again, sort of wearing my mobile hat here, thinking about mobile technology, because mobile isn't about simply being able to move the device, but you have to be able to use it when you get there. And there are two things that I want to talk about in terms of moving it there. The first is that this machine has the best Wi-Fi performance of any laptop on the planet. And there's one reason for it. We don't have any magic about Wi-Fi performance, but we are the only people who don't hide the antenna. Okay? All your antennas are hidden inside your screen. Well, we stick them up there. One of the
That's smart.
my head test engineer, who lives in New South Wales in Australia, did a test. He's an amateur radio junkie. He goes out into the outback and tests stuff. And he had 2 people standing on the ground doing this, okay, with 2 of these laptops, with a Wi-Fi connection. They were 3 kilometers apart. Now, this was ideal conditions, okay, dry, flat, no trees, but still, 3 kilometers, pretty darn good for Wi-Fi performance. These are 2 antennas, so we support antenna diversity. We're always looking to see which antenna has the best signal and switch to use that one. It's also the most fragile part of the machine, okay? Your little brother can rip one of these things off, so it's also a sort of survivability feature, is that if one of them breaks, the machine will still work. You still have another antenna to do that. One of the things that we did, and probably from a technology perspective, our biggest failure is our mesh networking technology. We tried to do 6 or 7 impossible things, and we managed about 5 of them. And one of them that didn't work is the mesh networking. Although we are still working on it, we haven't given up yet. The mesh networking was based on the draft 802.11s networking standard, which basically allows each device to forward packets for another device. So that we imagined a scenario where you might be at school, might have a school where the school has got maybe a 3G modem, but there's some internet connection out from there, and maybe you've got a couple of houses in the village, and this guy and this guy can make a Wi-Fi connection to the school, but these other people can't. Okay, but this guy can see this guy, and this guy can see that guy, and these 2 guys can see that guy. So if your laptops all agree to forward packets for each other, you can do this, hop from one to the next to provide internet connectivity to everybody in that chain. It kind of sort of works, and in fact, we made a lot of investment in the laptop to allow the main processor and main memory and everything else to shut down, to go into sleep mode, while the wireless radio was just autonomously forwarding packets. So it only ran about 250 milliwatts, just kind of sitting there waiting for packets to come and go. There are a number of successful mesh routing applications like this out there in the world. A number of people, particularly in Europe, people are building kind of these village or metropolitan mesh networks to provide shared access to everybody. The biggest benefit they have is that the nodes don't move. The nodes sit still. There's a moderate amount of work you have to do to keep track of the routing tables. Which machines can I see, which machines can't I see? What's the best way to get, if this guy can also see this guy, well, I ought to send my packets this way instead of going the long way around, but this guy can also see this guy. So I ought to know not to send my packets that way because I can go that way. It gets pretty complicated. You can figure it out, but it really helps if the nodes are all sitting still. The biggest problem we have is that the next morning, all those laptops go to school. And they all go and now you have 50 laptops sitting in a room this size, all saying, "Oh, I can forward that packet. I can go help that. I can do that. Yeah, give me that one." And you saturate the radio spectrum, and you're screwed. It just doesn't work. And the thing that we were never able to figure out is how do you, in a way that works for an 8-year-old, do all of this transparently. I mean, you don't want the kids to say, you know, put me into packet routing forwarding mode, turn it off. You know, you don't want these nerdy little knobs. You want it to just work, and we're still trying to do that. Yeah.
Did you, I mean, this might sound very intuitive, but I just want to know what the flaw with this is. Tracing plus NFC near field communication. So if you are within near fields, then you don't tend to rely on that and you look for something further. And tracing, you simply trace the path down to how many steps it goes for and take the shortest path that gives you a full link.
It's tricky to do those in practice. We're still working on it, and we're still looking at it. What you also need to figure out is how do you not burn up all of your power trying to figure out what you ought to be doing. Okay, this is the second version of our laptop. I was going to talk about power in a minute. Actually, before I talk about power, I want to say one more thing about. Well, put this up here on the projector. This is also now the first thing I'll tell you is this laptop is asleep. Okay, we were talking about this a little bit at lunch. Okay, we built technology that allows the laptop to go to sleep, but leave the screen refreshed. And one of the things that we constantly look to do is figure out how to get our suspend and resume times as short as possible. I mean, if you can put your laptop to sleep and wake it up again in 20 milliseconds, then you can put your laptop to sleep while somebody's typing. If they pause between words, or if they pause in a sentence, right? I mean, there's nothing to do as long as you can go up and down very, very quickly. So we go here now. In fact, here I'll wait for another moment, do that a little bit more dramatically. But the laptop is now asleep, and if I touch the touchpad to move the mouse around, that was pretty quick that time. There's a teeny weeny little delay.
What are we looking for? Tell her what woke up.
A delay.
But I mean, did the mouse appear? The little arrow disappeared?
Mouse is there. Mouse stays there.
Yeah.
It's just that when I touch the touchpad to move the mouse, it takes ready, go. It's about 100 milliseconds. It's hard to see. But by being able to go to sleep that often, we can really save a lot of the main processor's power. That means that the bulk of our power goes into the display. And the display is a unique bimodal display, that this is a color transmissive display. I can also turn down the screen power, and it's now a black and white reflective display. It's only, there's no backlight, okay? So it's only reflecting ambient light, okay? And that's great if you're out in bright sunlight. That's exactly what, this machine works perfectly in bright sunlight. Works better in bright sunlight because it uses less power. So the display now only uses half a watt when you're in this mode. So you can control how that works. In the original version of the machine, we use about an average of 5 watts. A typical laptop will use 20 to 30 watts. We use about 5 watts. In this updated version, we got that down to about 4 watts. Because we fixed a big problem with USB. And we're doing a new version that's based on an ARM processor that we think will get us down to about 2 watts of power. And at that point, it starts to really make, 2 watts is about what an 8 to 10-year-old child who is well-fed and healthy enough to be able to go to school can generate about 2 watts of power with their own body, with a hand crank, foot pedal, or something like that. So at that point, when we have a hand crank for these, some of you may have seen them. It's very popular. It looks like a pencil sharpener. Plug it in, you turn the crank. And if you do that for 1 hour and 47 minutes, you can completely charge the battery. There are very few people who are willing to do that for 1 hour and 47 minutes because you get, the runtime you get out of it isn't enough. If we get down to 2 watts, then you'll be able to get about a 10-to-1 ratio, where cranking for 1 minute gets you 10 minutes of runtime. Cranking for 6 minutes gets you an hour of runtime. And at that point, we think that it's really worth doing. If you have this in this backlight mode, then you can also, let's see if I can find a good application. Oh, here's a good one. So there's a moon activity here that will show you what the moon looks like right now. Some kids were really excited. About a week or two, there was a total lunar eclipse. The moon is pink. During a total lunar eclipse, this moon turns pink. So everybody thought that was really exciting. But you can also, this will get updated in real time, but you can also take this display on top and flip it over so it's sort of like a book reader. And particularly if you're outdoors, this is really suitable for use as a book reader. We have a variety of book reading applications on it. So it really makes we have a couple of guys at work. One guy hacked his Kindle so that he could actually extract the books as PDFs and put them on here. So
I have a couple, now you said it's a book reader.
yeah,
It's actually very good.
yeah. It's a very nice book reading tool. Yeah.
Just going back when you were using it for like a little display earlier on when you were showing the serial number, you simply, while the machine was, I guess, in sleep mode, you just took the battery out and it was able to safely shut down. So how did that? It's fine if you just pull out the battery. It won't damage the operating system anyway.
Yeah. Just pull it out.
It doesn't have a hard drive, does it?
No, it's got a solid state drive.
Nice.
There's no hard drive.
So you can't download stuff to it.
No, you can. It's just a solid state drive.
But it's like one, not that.
Well, this is a 4 gigabyte
Oh.
storage model. So this is the new and improved model.
How fast is boot time?
You can figure that out while.
Um,
Oh wait! I missed that. Hang on. Hang on. I gotta do this again. I should have let that go. This is a classic. This is see how good your probably easier. Just take this out. So start over again. Okay. Listen closely. Name that composer. Actually, it sounds even better.
What's the Big Ben thing?
No. It is actually a guitar solo composed and performed by The Edge. This is sort of U2's contribution to our laptops. You have never heard this before. But they liked what we were doing and they asked how they could help. And we said, well, I don't know, how can you help? Well, we need a startup sound. so make one. So that's how we got our startup giant. Yeah?
the hard drive that you mentioned, the 4 gigabyte hard drive, it's volatile or non-volatile?
It's non-volatile.
So it's completely separate from the RAM?
It's completely separate from the RAM. It is literally in this device. I didn't
So it's
miss
about a minute?
I think it's about 40 seconds, 45 seconds or so for boot time. It's actually a micro SD card. The reason we did that was because the micro SD format is very popular. We use them in cell phones and in cameras. And as a result, it's the cheapest way to get that kind of storage. This machine costs about $169 to manufacture.
It's also future-proof.
Well, we hope so, but nothing's ever future-proof. Keep asking questions. I'm going to go, the reason I took this out, this is a #1 Phillips screwdriver, which is all you need to completely disassemble and reassemble this laptop, because stuff does break. You can't make it last forever, but you have to make it not only robust, but repairable as well. Yeah?
So I read a lot about the EXO laptop's security model.
Yeah.
And a lot of theoretical stuff back when it was, back around 2007 when I got mine.
Mm-hmm.
How's that been working out?
It works out pretty well. It's it's an interesting model. The laptop has a security system built into open firmware that is based on public key cryptography. And the laptop, when they are shipped from the factory, they are what we call unactivated, and the machines won't boot. They are literally bricks. And when you get them, when they first start to boot up, when you first try to boot them up, I should not try to talk and disassemble at the same time because I keep forgetting screws. When you first boot them up, they look for an activation key, which is just a signed, it's basically the serial number of the machine encrypted with a public key cipher. And they look for that signature either over Wi-Fi or on a USB drive plugged into one of the USB ports. And when they find that signature, the machine is then activated and it will boot. And then it remains activated. But what that allows us to do is provide for transport security. Okay? That these machines end up going to places where you worry about theft. And you know, a shipping container full of these laptops could be, at least in theory, worth a lot of money. And so we really make sure that people know that that shipping container full of laptops is actually a bunch of 1.45 kilogram doorstops, because they won't do anything without being activated. And we always ship the activation keys, which are very small, on a USB drive via a different delivery channel, so that they're not with the laptops. And so they're, until the laptops are activated, you can't do anything with them. In Haiti, they were very worried. There were about 10,000 laptops delivered to Haiti, and they were very worried about theft. And after about a year, they decided to do an audit to make sure they knew where those 10,000 laptops were. And at the end of the audit, they discovered that 2 laptops were missing. One was taken by the custodian in the superintendent's office where the laptops were stored, and another one got stolen by one of the people doing the audit. They really did pretty well. This is the display module. It's pretty easy to take out, and if it's going to break, it's the most likely thing to break in the laptop. It's pretty easy to replace. Just take out 2 connectors and do that. And I'm also going to take off the back of the laptop and show you a little bit about the motherboard that we talked about earlier, about Mojo being up here up on top. Yeah?
I know in the past I had a solar panel cell phone charger. I wasn't sure if that would ever be available. I mean, if you're going to be out in the sun anyway, do you have like some kind of plug that you could do for charging in the sun?
Yes, absolutely. So take the panel out, display panel out, replace that. Yes, we do. And in fact, there's 2 things that we do. We have a 10-watt solar panel that's about 2 feet by 3 feet and carried around. It costs about $25. And that makes a very convenient portable solar panel. Charges, again, it's 10 watt, and this is about a 4-watt machine, so it's sort of a 2.5 to 1 ratio.
Right.
You know, 1 hour of charging gets you 2.5 hours. Then a lot of places, particularly in Peru, they have a lot of schools will have a permanent PV installation on the roof of the school, and the kids will take their laptops to school. They'll charge the laptops at school. One of the things we do is we have a multi-battery charger. It's just a gang charger. It's a box that holds 15 batteries. And so in some places they'll charge them overnight and then they'll just swap batteries when they go in. Power management is a big deal. We spend a lot of time on power because people either don't have mains electricity. In Rwanda, we have 150,000 laptops in Rwanda, and only 4% of the country has mains electricity. Plus some of those you can plug it in. So, you know, solar is a big deal in those places, and it really makes a big issue for us. One of the challenges with solar, we're spending a lot of time on right now, is being able, we really try hard to make sure that whatever you can plug into this charging port, we can take it. And we actually had a problem in Peru because some of all of our equipment is specified to work at up to 5,000 meters altitude, which causes us a hassle with a lot of manufacturers. Standard is 3,000 meters, but we actually really have kids who live at 4,000, 4,500 meters and need the chargers and everything else to work. Solar panels, when they're cold, when they're new, and when they're at high altitude, work better. So the very first major solar installation we had in Peru, the laptops wouldn't charge because the overvoltage protection circuitry shut them down. And they said, no, you're giving me too much juice, I can't do this. So we learned a lot of things in the field. No matter how much you think about it, you get surprised.
The screen you took out, what is that made out of?
I'm sorry?
The screen, what is the display made out of?
It's a glass display.
Just glass?
Well, yeah.
I'm just surprised it didn't crack when you threw it on the floor.
No, it doesn't crack on the floor. And the reason, there's a couple of reasons for that. One is you can see that the display has these cushioned mounts on it. This is like a little rubber. Here, work there. It's like, oh, that's the circle. It's just a little rubber washer, okay, that acts as a little bit of padding. The other thing that you learn, which is surprising, glass is amazingly flexible. You can really bend it, an awful lot. You don't want to scratch it. If you scratch it, it'll crack. But if you can keep it from scratching, it's really very flexible. The biggest problem we had with the displays was in Peru, and it took us about a year to figure it out. There's another mobile technology problem. It took us about a year to figure out the problem. This is the display interface cable. This is for the backlight. And the display interface cable goes down, and there are two driver ICs mounted on the glass underneath this plastic, right here. And each of them drives half of the display. And we were getting these laptops where half of the display would go dead. And we couldn't figure out why. We could not figure out why. And we finally discovered that one of the driver ICs was getting cracked. Okay, it's just a very small, skinny chip, and it's epoxied down onto the glass. And it would crack, and it would fail. And we could not reproduce this failure. I remember sitting in a conference call with my VP of hardware engineering, John Watlington, and he was sitting there with a laptop and a hammer. And he was banging on the screen with a hammer, trying to break it, and it wouldn't break. And we finally, after an amazing amount of sleuthing and stuff, discovered that if you take this laptop, let's see, let's just do a half-assed job of putting this together. Put this in here, put it on like this, okay? And you close your laptop like this, and you're a Peruvian kid, and you're about to go ride your horse to school, and you put the laptop in your saddlebag, okay? And you get on your horse, and you start going boop, 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 and you ride your horse to school, and your saddlebag is too tight. You end up flexing the screen as the horse bops up and down, and you can crack one of those driver ICs. And it took us over a year to figure that out. It was driving everybody crazy because Peru had this failure rate on their screens that was 20 times higher than anybody else in the world. And they were the same screens, and they were the same kids, and we just couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. And it turned out it was riding a horse. And so all we did was we made a very simple modification that just put a stiffener bar in there that prevented the flex from hitting at those points. And that fixed the problem. But no, glass is pretty darn good. Pretty tough. One more thing I wanted to point out about thinking about mobility. Again, mobility means, freedom, right? It means that you can confidently take this thing wherever you want, go wherever wherever you want to go, and you don't have to worry. You can get things to work, you can get Wi-Fi from 3 kilometers away, you can get all kinds of other stuff. But things do break, you do need to repair them, so we make it very easy for people to take them apart. There are 11 and 12-year-old kids around the world who run repair centers to fix broken laptops, to take them apart, because it's something that we really try to encourage the kids to learn how to do, make it really simple for them. So you can really take the whole thing apart with that #1 screwdriver. In fact, inside the handle here is a complete set of spare screws. I mean, if you're in the Sudan and you drop a screw, it's a long way to the hardware store. So it costs us about 3 cents to put a set of screws in the handle. But but it really saves your bacon if you if you need to get at that stuff. And you do. Push here. Now I'm probably going to find out that I took them out and used them the last time or something because I lost some screws. This is a relatively new machine, so the plastic is kind of stiff.
What percent of the cost is purely production, and what if it is R&D?
Well, that's an interesting question. One of the things that we do that is extremely important to the way sort of we do business, if you will, is that all of our R&D is funded by corporate sponsorships and corporate donations. Okay? We are a 501c3 nonprofit charity, and we're a nonprofit. We make no money. I make no money off of selling these laptops. So every laptop is sold. It's actually not sold by OLPC. They're actually sold. We do the introductions, and the country that's buying the laptop will buy them directly from Quanta Computing, from the factory in Songjiang. So they're the ones.
Where's the factory?
In Songjiang, just outside of Shanghai.
Okay.
Where Quanta Computer builds them. And we don't make any money off the sale of laptops. And that's something that's been very important right from the beginning, is to make it very clear to people. If we're trying to convince somebody, I'm not going to succeed at this, I'm going to give up there. I can't talk and this is on the laptop at the same time. And we really make it clear to people, if we're trying to get you to buy these laptops, there's nothing in it for us. It literally makes no difference to me financially whether somebody buys a laptop or doesn't. Right now we're working with Marvell Semiconductor, which is a ARM processor company. They make a lot of other stuff as well. And they fund our R&D. So they're now funding, great segue, the R&D of our next generation device, which is probably going to cost about $6 million to develop. So they're funding that device, and when it comes for sale, comes on the market for sale, it will be for sale at cost, at manufacturing cost. Okay. So we decided the ultimate in low power computing, if we really want to achieve that goal, is to give kids a green slab of plastic. Okay? It's awesome. Okay. It's really rugged, no electricity whatsoever. But this is a mock-up of our Exo tablet computer. It is, as you can see, there's no holes. It's water, so when you're carrying it like this, it's watertight, dust-tight. Okay, so you take the Tupperware cover off. You take the Tupperware cover off. You can put it on the back, and now you expose your USB ports, speakers, microphone, power button, and have a 9.7-inch 4:3 aspect ratio tablet that's actually smaller and lighter than any other tablet out there. The screen, this screen image is the same size image as you'd have on an iPad, but the iPad's got big honking bezel around the outside. Keeps it small. It keeps it lightweight. And we're designing this with the same rugged, robust, low power requirements. You can see it's a little thicker than an iPad, and that gives us the additional rigidity that we want to be able to protect the display if it gets dropped. It'll be easily disassembled, unlike an iPad. I've actually taken iPads apart. It's not fun. It's not meant to be fun.
Did you actually reassemble it after you were done?
I reassembled it in a working but imperfect state, cosmetically blemished. Yeah, it was really hard. But the biggest thing, in addition to just sort of the portability and giving kids a tablet experience, is that we think this will be a 1 watt tablet. That we'll actually be able to get to the goal of using about 1 watt. That's about 40% of what an iPad uses. Using that same display technology that we used before. So we're hoping to have these shipping in volume about a year from now. And really get those out there in the world. Yeah.
Will that run Fedora as well?
No.
Okay.
What would that run?
So now you're going to ask me the Android question.
Android?
Maybe. We're trying to figure that out right now. Android's a possibility. Chrome OS is a possibility. The biggest problem is thinking about the fact that this is the only computer you have. It's the only computer anyone you know has. Okay? If you take an iPad out of the box, what's the very first thing that it does?
Makes you register
Makes you, how do you register?
with iTunes on your computer.
Right, so the very first thing you have to do is find another computer and plug it in, okay? It's the first thing you have to do. And there is no other computer. This is all there is. If you are out there, in the middle of nowhere, and you've got this, you probably have one of these covers that has a solar panel on the inside so that you can charge it, because at 1 watt, a solar panel this big is actually good enough
That's
to
so
charge,
cool.
to charge it.
Quick question.
You've got networking built in, so you can really be pretty autonomous. Yeah.
Is the panel being connected by a cable, or is it just directly attaching itself?
The battery?
The panel to that?
We don't know yet.
Alright.
We're experimenting with a couple of things. We're experimenting with putting a solar panel on the inside. The solar panel on the inside so that it doesn't get dirty and damaged when you're carrying it around. But possibly having a panel that's a solar panel with a battery pack, okay, so that you can take it and charge it, leave this out in the sun and charge it, and then take this and plug it in. And this model doesn't have them, but we're going to need either 2 or 4 screws on the side, so you can take it apart, so you can disassemble it. Our current thinking is we'll put 1 screw on each end, okay, to be able to disassemble it. That's sort of all you need. And at the same time, make those 2 screws power and ground connection for charging a 12-volt battery. So when you charge up this guy in the battery, stick this on, you've now made contact with those 2 contacts, and you can now run off of the battery that you charged out of the sun. Yeah.
Going back to the display, you said the only con of having glass is that once it scratches, it's more prone to cracking. So with this display on the tablet, if that is still glass and people are using like touch interfaces, it's more likely to scratch. So how are you gonna potentially compensate for that potential issue?
It's been a tough question. For a very long time, we thought we needed to build a tablet with a plastic display substrate. The problem is there's 2 big problems with plastic displays. They're soft, so they get scratched very easily. They're also not UV resistant. Our design goal is a display that can be used outside in the bright sun for 5 years. And the plastic will turn yellow and it'll crack with UV resistance. It's normally not a problem. Most of us use computers and tablets indoors. But we finally decided that it was easier to make glass unbreakable than to make plastic unscratchable. I mean, in a year, the plastic would get trashed. So there's some risk. We're still working. We're doing a lot of work on the display and on the glass and trying to figure out how to do that as well as possible. But it's not going to be perfect. So part of it is how if something does get damaged. Again, once you scratch it, it's prone to breakage, but it's not just going to break. So again, sort of look at an iPad. You can scratch the glass, but they're not going to break right away. And in fact, they may actually last for a long time. So if we can add enough rigidity to minimize the deformation of the display, then we might be able to survive the cracking. There's a lot of mechanical engineering and a lot of modeling that we have to do to figure Yeah.
So a lot of these ideas, like the wireless antenna and like the solar panels and stuff, don't just seem like a good idea for what you're doing, but just seem like a good idea in general. Like that'd be so cool to get like a netbook with that stuff. My question is, why don't hardware manufacturers like Asus and Dell and all these companies, why don't they do some of the cool stuff that you're doing?
That's a question we've scratched our head about a lot, in part because our software and our hardware is open source design. We would be happy to let anybody use this stuff for free. The reason we'd be happy to do that is because our biggest problem in getting our cost down is volume. 2.5 million laptops is not a lot for Asus or Dell or Acer. And if we were able to get more people adopting these technologies, our costs would go down. We'd be able to get the components more cheaply. You know, it's two things. It's outside their comfort zone. It's not what they normally do. And where their market is sort of first world consumers, I've always believed that people will buy as much computing power as they can afford. Okay? Electricity is cheap here. Nobody cares about electricity. I mean, particularly at this scale. At the scale of your laptop, I mean, how many of you know how much power your laptop uses? Just don't even ask. It just doesn't matter. So spending a little extra money to add, charging circuitry that is more sophisticated, or fiddling with a custom Linux distro that knows how to go to sleep, in 100 milliseconds. It's just not worth it. They just don't care, and it's easier for them to just keep going out, the simplest possible path forward.
Do you think it'll happen eventually?
I don't know. I mean, there's sort of two sides to the same coin. I mean, we tell people that we design, Americans don't understand what we do because we try to design for conditions that you don't see in America. Well, conversely, those are conditions that you don't see in America, so people don't necessarily, if electricity got expensive, really expensive, or people needed device, if people actually cared about using their devices in bright sunlight, yeah, they would, but people really just don't care.
So this could be like a classic innovator's dilemma scenario where you find some application in the U.S. or in the developed world where the characteristics of this are actually uniquely good. The drawbacks of this, like the thin screen or whatever it is, are actually good. Like, what about like outdoors people, like hunters and like fishermen or mountain climbers and so on? Pretty small market.
Maybe
anyway.
actually, the most interesting conversations I've had about people in the U.S. have been shop floor automation people. And there's somebody who's running around, who's managing a whole bunch of, a robotic warehouse that's moving things around, or a bunch of CNC milling machines. And they want to be able to know what's going on each machine right now and be able to check the status of things and do that. And they might drop it on the factory floor and the lighting might not be that good and they really want to be able to do it all day without having to plug it in and that kind of thing. So maybe there. I think that, I'm an outdoor nerd. I'd probably be the first person to do something like that. Play with my GPS and do interesting things. I don't know.
But I assume as an organization, you guys don't really spend much time thinking about that, right?
No.
But that's not a goal of yours.
No.
Your goal is to get it out to the world.
Completely not a goal.
That's
We don't
the
get distracted.
right. Couple more questions and then we'll let.
To help with funding, I think it ties into what Peter was saying. Would you ever consider releasing a consumer product to help build funding for other people? Maybe something that was a little bit more, I guess, American, you could say.
We don't know how to do that. If you look at the level of support, we offer no support. We will for each country, we will train some people and get them up and going. We don't know how to do that. If there were a partnership with a company that wanted to do that, and that made sense for them, and maybe they wanted to fund us, maybe that would work, but we'd never do that. It's just not what we do. Our entire R&D team is about a dozen people around the world. In my group, we're just, we're 20 people in the whole organization. Yeah.
Just I really, really wanted to buy that tablet. Could I buy that tablet? Because I would really like to buy that tablet. Not right now. In a year.
This tablet probably cost me about $6,000. So you don't want this tablet. That doesn't even work. I don't know. not from us.
eBay.
But, again, we would love to see maybe an educational company or somebody in the US. We'd love to see somebody pick up that ball and carry it, but it just doesn't fit. I've always told people, one of the things that I respect the most about any organization is somebody that says, you know, that's a great idea. We don't do that. And be able to say, that's not our expertise, it's not our skill, it's not our focus. There are lots of other, if there's a business opportunity there are people who will take it and do something with it. If you have access to capital, you can do those things. That's not what we do. One more?
How do you guys fall into this whole idea? I mean, people at MIT, how did you end up coming up with this whole project, concept, everything? Where did it start?
I work for a fellow named Nicholas Negroponte. He's the founder of the MIT Media Lab. He's been at MIT for a long time. Nicholas really looked at the possibility of getting educational technology out to kids around the world, really changing the educational paradigm. And Nicholas is really good at setting impossible goals. I mean, that's his job. So, you know, my job is to sort of be the interface between Nicholas and reality and sort of figure out, it can be a stressful place to be. But you need people like that. You need people who have unreasonable expectations, who really have unreasonable goals. And he stood up 5 years ago and said, we need a robust, low-power, sunlight-readable laptop for kids in the developing world that costs $100. Now, we haven't gotten to $100 yet. Okay, we've got, you know, a $166 or so laptop. But if you didn't say that, we'd have a $300 laptop. If you can try to get to 100. And so it was really Nicholas and then a small number of people, you know, he worked with, really got the idea off and going. It's pretty cool stuff. I'm a late comer, so I don't need credit for any of that.
It's really cool stuff. So let's thank Ed for.
I want that laptop so bad.
Okay, so we'll have a 10-minute break.
You got the first gen or the second gen?
25 minutes.
You gotta have a second gen.
I want a third gen.
I have a
Chico?
Yeah, I just put the master.
Oh, we have.
Yeah.
We have another device?
Todd's the last person.
What's up with this map?
You're gonna walk through.
This map.
I mean, yeah, it's overlay.
Or there's take a piggyback.
So,